Part 10. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 93. As soon as he finished speaking, the audience burst into wild cheers like howling wolves. In the originally empty passage, two prison workers pushed out a mobile bed one after the other. Lying on the bed was a naked man, with his hands, feet, and neck tightly bound to the bed, and a rag stuffed in his mouth. Sutingyu took a closer look. Oh haha. It's the male player who escaped just now. Within a few minutes, not only was the man arrested, but he was also stripped naked and paraded around in front of everyone. Behind the mobile bed was a tall, thick, bald, fierce man with an ugly scar on his face that would scare children to tears. The vicious man was carrying a heavy red wooden box in his hand, and as he moved around, there was a sound of metal banging. The host pointed at the fierce man and introduced to the audience, "This is Brass, the contract butcher of the underground Coliseum. He has been in the industry for 20 years and has handled tens of thousands of domestic pigs. He has rich experience and superb knife skills." When Sutingyu heard this introduction, he had some suspicion in his heart. Tonight, this somewhat disobedient performer and Mr. Brass Butcher will share the stage, the art of body mutilation. At this time, the male player who was tied to the mobile bed no longer cared about the shame, and his body began to tremble with fear. Body cutting art? The male player had a pale face and whined, "Let me go." Unfortunately, no one paid attention to him. The male player was pushed onto the fighting platform, two prison workers brought a wooden table, and the butcher placed the wooden box on the table. Opening the wooden box, it was neatly filled with a set of custom-made knives for killing pigs and skinning them, shining with cold light. Whoa! The male player struggled violently, his eyes red, and two lines of helpless tears dripped from the corners of his eyes. Swish! The butcher took out two shaving knives and went back and forth on the male player's white body to shave off the hair, eyebrows, stubble, armpit hair, chest hair, hand hair, leg hair. All the hair on his body was shaved dry, and the male player was so white that he looked like a fat pig waiting to be slaughtered. After shaving, the butcher changed his knife and started cutting the pork. Cut along the texture of the skin to minimize the flow of pig blood and cut out pork that can be called a work of art, crystal clear under the light. Waves? The severe pain in his body caused the male player to collapse on the spot. Tears and snot flowed out unsatisfactorily. He was still twisting his body violently and even hitting the bedboard with the back of his head. But these are all useless efforts, the art of cutting is still ongoing. Listen to the sound. Make him scream. Make him cry. The audience seemed to find this silent performance not exciting at all, and they all shouted things like, "Get the rag out of the slave's mouth." As an excellent host who respects the wishes of the audience, the smiling Chris personally removed the rag from the male player's mouth and put the microphone to the latter's mouth. The male player's vaguely pronounced woo-woo suddenly turned into a heartbreaking ah-ah-ah. "Let me go, let me go. You devils. Devils. This is so bad, I can't do it anymore." The male player cursed incoherently, even to the game, but it was harmonized so that no other NPC could hear it except the players in the stands. But generally speaking, the audience heard the curse words. Instead of being angry, their faces became even more excited and excited, making them look crazy. The butcher has cut out the meat of the male player's hands and feet accurately, leaving a row of skeletons. The crystal clear pink meat pieces are placed on a clean plate with a trace of blood, and are carefully arranged to become perfect. Immaculate work of art. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 94. The male player couldn't stand it anymore, so when the butcher wasn't paying attention, he bit his tongue and committed suicide. The moment the tongue was bitten off, the man was still alive. A large amount of blood surged up in his mouth, blocking his throat and respiratory tract. The male player's body twitched violently several times, and finally he slowly suffocated to death. What's the situation? Why did you die? It's really unlucky. He died before he even started. Seeing that the person was dead, the butcher's expression remained unchanged. After cleaning the blood from the corpse's mouth, he continued to cut the remaining flesh. In the end, there was only a bare skeleton left on the mobile bed, without a trace of flesh and blood attached. The host called the staff on the spot and distributed the cut pieces of meat to the audience's little pets. Ugh! In the stands, the few surviving players witnessed the whole process and couldn't help but retched one by one, their faces extremely ugly. Sutinyu blinked his big eyes and opened his mouth slightly, also slightly frightened. Wow! That male player is too difficult. If I had known this, I might as well have hit the wall and died from the beginning. 044, who is 044, a staff member was looking for the next performer. As if to prevent another escape, 4 prison guards arrived at once. Sutinyu heard her number and raised her hand obediently. I am 044. After the prison worker confirmed Sutinyu's identity, the 4 of them stared at Sutinyu, fearing that she might escape. Although they can be recaptured, but the performance is delayed, the prison workers will also be blamed. It's a pity that Sutinyu didn't even think about escaping, and just followed the prison worker to the entrance passage. As soon as Sutinyu came out of the passage, excited or surprised eyes from all directions were fixed on her, and these eyes were full of malice. It's really surprising that this is the 3rd female performer tonight, and the first 2 female performers unfortunately did not complete the performance. The host began to liven up the atmosphere and mobilize the audience's emotions. Let's do it together. I hope this female performer can give a wonderful performance. Sutinyu walked onto the beast fighting platform, and the door of the iron cage was immediately locked. The audience became excited one by one, and they couldn't wait to see the wonderful scene of this fragile girl being torn into pieces in the next second. Under the spotlight, Sutinyu, one of the protagonists of this performance, also expressed his excitement from the bottom of his heart. Wow, is this normal treatment for big stars? The needle does not poke. The trainer brought up a canine animal with a clear head, a huge skull, flat and slightly rounded, almond-shaped eyes, a large and wide nose, widely separated nostrils, a well-developed lower jaw, wide and deep, and a strong and broad back. The muscles are well developed and the back hair is smooth, shiny, and dense. After he was released from the animal cage, he kept growling, his eyes were fierce, and he looked very untouchable. Sutinyu blinked his big eyes, feeling a little surprised. This is a pit bull, a ferocious dog breed with powerful destructive power. It is naturally very brave and fierce, and it will definitely fight to the death when facing the enemy. The most terrifying thing about pit bulls is that they can continuously release 120 minutes of endurance and a bite force of 80 kilograms per square centimeter. Coupled with a pair of tough skin without pain-sensing nerves and well-developed muscle groups, they form a strong protective armor. Therefore, pit bulls are also called fighting dogs that don't know pain. The pit bull seemed to know that the weak girl in front of him was his food tonight. He grinned at Sutinyu, revealing 2 rows of symmetrical and complete snow-white scissor-shaped teeth. Just by looking at it, you could feel the bite. How amazing the power is! You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 95. The host looked excited. Gentlemen and ladies, the 44th performance of the first night begins now. As soon as he finished speaking, the animal trainer untied the chain that tied the pit bull's collar and exited the iron cage. The prison worker outside immediately locked the big iron door. Hee hee. The pit bull was free and did not rush towards Sutinyu. Instead, he kept a certain distance and made an attacking posture. His fierce eyes were fixed on Sotingu's every move, and he let out a few low growls. Sotingu tilted his head and stood motionless. Woof! Suddenly, the pit bull moved, like a lightning flash. The hind legs exerted force violently, and the whole mad dog jumped up like a spring, opened its mouth, and the upper and lower rows of ferocious fangs were exposed, shining with cold light. Bite her face. Bite her hand. Bite her leg. The audience laughed again with malicious laughter, and almost everyone had strange smiles on their faces. The smiles were full of expectation, and the anticipation was full of excitement. In the eyes of all the spectators, the girl on the fighting stage was so frightened that she couldn't even hide. Just when the pit bull was about to bite the girl's fragile neck, the latter suddenly bent over, rolled sideways, and escaped the attack so easily. The atmosphere in the whole place froze for a moment. No. You read that right. You actually dodged it? You dodged it so casually. On the fighting stage, Pitbull stopped its forward momentum and turned around, only to see the smiling girl extending the middle finger of her right hand. When she met Pitbull's fierce eyes, she curved her finger and hooked her finger provocatively. Pitbull, hashtag. Hee hee. Pitbull opened his mouth and his eyes seemed to be spitting out fire. Sotingu raised her eyebrows slightly. Is this stupid dog really a spirit? Can he even understand provocative actions? Woof. Woof. As soon as Sotingu finished speaking, the angry pit bull roared twice and rushed over at lightning speed. Sotingu's big eyes unblinkingly locked onto the running figure of the pit bull, and then slowly stepped back half a body distance with his right foot. Woof. The pit bull right in front of you opened its mouth wide, its eyes flashed fiercely, and its expression was ferocious. Sotingu's eyes narrowed, and he twisted his waist hard and swept his straight and slender right leg out from bottom to top. Kicked half of the pit bull's face. Woof, ow. The pit bull flew backwards in a parabola. Bang, a large pile of pit bull hit the hard iron cage, making a violent sound. Crack. The pit bull fell from the iron railing to the ground, with a dazed look on its face and almost unsteady on its four legs. In the auditorium, when the audience saw the pit bull attacking again, just when they were about to wave their flags and cheers, they disappeared. For a moment, the whole audience was silent. It was as if something was stuffed in the throat. It was so blocked that I could not speak, could not go up or down, and felt very uncomfortable. Then, under everyone's disbelieving gaze, the seemingly frail girl on the stage moved again. I saw her walking straight towards the pit bull. Before the latter had time to adjust, she reached out with one hand and grabbed the pit bull's throat. Buckle up. Choke. Ah, ayo. The pit bull struggled with its legs and started to run. It tried to break free of the restraints and bit back. The girl turned over and easily pressed her entire body on Pitbull without loosening the restraints around Pitbull's throat. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 96. With her free left hand on the other side of the girl, she kept plucking out the dog hair, pulling out a large handful at a time. Some even pulled out the fur on the leash due to excessive force, which made the pit bull howl in pain. This. The host, who was originally calm, also looked confused. This script is wrong. The host's eyes widened. He even saw the girl deliberately stretching out a foot to step on the pit bull's tail, and then, come, back, crush, step on. Hiss. Only the pit bull at this moment can experience this sour feeling. As soon as 5 minutes came, the host woke up from his daze and announced quickly, "The performance is over. Thank you to performer 044, for the wonderful performance. Congratulations to performer 044 for entering the next round of performances." The host said the word wonderful with gritted teeth, reluctantly, but his strong professionalism was still struggling to support it. As soon as the host announced the results, the animal trainers and prison workers outside the cage rushed in and rescued the pit bull from Sotingu's hands, who was completely doubting the dog's birth. In this regard, Sotingu expressed regret that the 5 minutes was a bit short and delayed the friendly exchange between her and the pit bull. There was no smile on the host's face because he felt that his career had suffered a huge blow. Now, he just wants this 044 who doesn't cooperate with the performance script to get off the stage as soon as possible. But the host never expected that this 044 performer not only did not crawl out when he saw the iron door opened like other performers, but instead turned around with a look of reluctance and ran away after he came out. Come find yourself. Dear Mr. Smita, I would like to ask, did I perform well in this performance? Can I get the little gift I wish for? Sotingu blinked her big sincere and harmless eyes and ran over to ask the host. The corner of the host's mouth twitched, and he was going crazy inside. Still outstanding? Still want a gift? Want a shit? But before the host could speak, Sotingu said to herself, my performance must be the best. Just look at the reaction of the audience. There was silence, like a dead silence in the audience. This must be because of my outstanding performance. The performance is shocking. Isn't it? Mr. Smita. No, Smita's expression changed, and her chest heaved violently. Ah. Isn't it? Sotingu looked confused, then clenched her fist with firm eyes. Then I sincerely apply to perform again. This time it will be even better. Even more exciting. It will definitely blow up the whole audience. The host felt a headache and wanted to get angry and scold him, but when he saw the girl's bright and sincere eyes, he was somehow bewitched, and his anger was inexplicably reduced by half. So, the host said feebly, okay, you are the best performer tonight, and the gift is also yours. Tell me, what kind of gift do you want, food or medicine? Sotingu giggled and rubbed her hands. I want a better quality glue. The host was a little confused when he heard this strange gift request. In the past, these performers either wanted exquisite food or precious medicines, or even a thick quilt. How could they ask for glue? The host looked at Sotingu again, as if looking at a mentally retarded person, and said quickly, this is what you asked for, you can't go back on it. Yes, Sotingu nodded repeatedly. The host called a prison worker and asked him to get a bottle of glue. After getting the glue, Sotingu walked down from the fighting stage honestly, returned to the stands, and continued to watch the rest of the performance. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 97. In the remaining performances, the audience seemed to have not recovered from Sotingu's excellent performance just now, and their reactions were mediocre. Sotingu watched it carefully, and then came to a conclusion with a simple face, her performance was not as good as hers. MVP of course. 23:55. After all the performances on the first night were successfully concluded, the audience began to exit and leave the underground coliseum. As long as the surviving slaves like Sotingu are still breathing, regardless of whether they are injured or not, they will be taken directly back to their original prisons. The prison guards threw down 2 identical medicine boxes and left the prison. All the injured slaves and players wanted to grab a medicine box, but those slaves and players who had not yet performed on stage were not stupid and ran to grab it too. In the end, after snatching back and forth, one was snatched by Sotingu, and the other by the players of the temporary alliance. Sotingu had 2 medicine boxes in his hands, which made everyone jealous. You already have a medicine box, why are you still robbing it? Medicine boxes should be taken out and given to those in need. There are only 3 medicine boxes. She takes 2 medicine boxes by herself. What kind of words? Sotingu had a medicine box in each hand, but no one dared to grab it, so they could only talk. Sotingu blinked his big eyes and said seriously, I'm injured, of course I need a medicine box. Everyone, do you think we are blind or stupid? Of all the people who came back, you are the only one with a rosy face and a lively look. There is a fart injury. Didn't you see any wounds? Sutinyu spread her hands, palms facing outward, to show everyone her wounds, and said in a pitiful tone, "Hey, my hands are all congested and swollen. It hurts." Everyone, is that congestion? It was obviously just a little red. Really, I have never seen such a shameless person. Everyone who was cursing in their hearts did not dare to conflict with Sutinyu again. Especially the player alliance who got the medicine box silently lowered their presence, fearing that the slaves would bully Sutinyu and not dare to snatch Sutinyu, but would come to snatch their medicine box. In the end, Sutinyu easily got another medicine box. "Boss, you're back," the fat man breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Sutinyu had returned safely and escaped safely to get a medicine box. Yes, Sutinyu handed both medicine boxes to the fat man, and then went to see Qin-Chi. After sleeping for a few hours, Qin-Chi also woke up. Sutinyu walked over and sat next to Qin-Chi. Her cute big eyes blinked. "Qin-Chi, do you still remember me?" Qin-Chi turned his head, stared at Sutinyu for 2 seconds, and said, "I'm not stupid." Sutinyu blinked his big eyes again and couldn't help but laugh. Ahem, after the identification, Qin-Chi still remembers her. On the other side, the fat man opened the new medicine box. When he saw a small bottle of medicine inside, his eyes lit up and he turned his head excitedly. "Boss, there is disinfectant." The fat man also lowered his voice for fear of being heard by outsiders. "It just so happens that the whip wounds on Brother Chin's body can be disinfected. I see that the whip held by the NPC is covered with black blood. There must be a lot of bacteria on it." Sutinyu didn't care about teasing Qin-Chi anymore and said to Fatty, "I'm blocking other people's sight. Fatty, please move faster. Disinfectant is a much more precious medicine than hemostatic medicine. If someone else discovers it, they might use Sutinyu's power to snatch the medicine again." "No problem, boss." In addition to disinfectant, the new medicine box also contains a bottle of hemostatic medicine, a pack of cotton swabs and bandages. It took the fat man less than 10 minutes to quickly disinfect Qin-Chi's wounds and tie the untied bandages. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 98. After processing, the fat man carefully put the disinfectant and other medicines back into the medicine box. "By the way, boss, what is the specific situation of fighting with wild beasts?" Fatty was still thinking about his precious life. The performers who came back were injured and missing. Fatty didn't dare to think about those missing performances. Or, have they all entered the belly of the beast? When Fatty asked, Sutinyu told Qin-Chi and Fatty the situation and rules of the first night's performance so that they could prepare. If Sutinyu guessed correctly, the remaining half of the performers should be on stage on the second night. After hearing this, the fat man panicked. "Boss, do you really want to hold on for 5 minutes? I'm afraid I can't even hold on for 10 seconds, and Brother Qin is also injured." Hearing this, Sutinyu turned his head to Qin-Chi and stared at the latter with his big eyes. Qin-Chi pursed her pale lips. "I have no problem." Sutinyu blinked, and then the two of them turned to look at the fat man at the same time. Stare. But the fat man looked confused. "Look, why are you looking at me?" 1 second, 2 seconds, the fat man belatedly said with a sad face, "Is it possible that I will deliver food to the beast?" Sutinyu nodded solemnly and sighed, "It's not possible, it's 100% certain." As he said that, Sutinyu stretched out his little hand and patted Fatty's shoulder, encouraging him, "Fatty, it's just a matter of having your neck bitten off in a few seconds. It's okay. It doesn't hurt." You can do it. Here's a lie. Fatty is going to cry. You don't have such a comforting thing. Chin-Chi coughed lightly, don't scare the fat man. When the fat man heard this, he was immediately moved. Brother Chin is still considerate. Be careful of scaring people to death all at once. It's not good, Chin-Chi added silently. Sutingyu quickly covered her mouth. Ahem, sorry, I can't hold it in, ha 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 ha. The fat man looked confused, then he realized what he was doing and accused him bitterly. Brother Chin, you have become evil. You have been led astray by the boss. This is none of my business, Sutingyu said it immediately without thinking. If one person is on stage alone, we can't help, and the fat man has no props, so it will be difficult to escape from the beast's mouth. Do you have any idea? Chin-Chi looked at Sutingyu, who was not worried at all, and asked. The pitiful fat man looked at Sutingyu. Boss, help me. If there is no other way, the fat man can only commit suicide. Anyway, he will die, and even if he is beaten to death, he cannot be eaten by wild beasts. Because of the previous copy, Fatty now has enough game currency to afford the consequences of failing to clear the level. But as a last resort, Fatty wanted to struggle for a while longer. Seeing this, Sutingyu stopped teasing Fatty, with a mysterious look on his face. There is a way, just wait a moment. Chin-Chi and Fatty watched as Sutingyu took out a bottle of something from his coat pocket. Deng ding look, Sutingyu proudly showed off to the two of them. This is the little gift I wanted to get after winning the favor of the audience and the host through my outstanding performance, glue. Chin-Chi and Fatty looked at each other silently. Glue. What's the use? When Sutingyu saw the two people's reactions, he snorted softly with a look of disdain on his face. I know your brains are short of paying the IQ tax. This glue is of great use. Chin-Chi asked, this glue can help Fatty solve the current problem. Sutingyu chuckled, of course, but let's wait until everyone else goes to bed first, and then I'll tell you. Looking at Sutingyu's mysterious and confident face, neither of them could guess what she was going to do, so they had to choose to believe it first. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 99. The slaves had already been fed once before entering the underground coliseum, and they were all huddled in the corner to rest. From time to time, there was a sound of heavy and rapid breathing in the prison, which was the sound made by some slaves when they were enduring the pain of their wounds. Players like Sutingyu only entered the dungeon when they were full, and they were not hungry now. When everyone else slowly closed their eyes and fell asleep, Sutingyu quietly moved closer to Fatty and whispered, Fatty, please move to the corner first and don't scream later. The fat man was a little confused, but he still obeyed. Chin-Chi sat leaning against the wall, with a hint of curiosity in his dull eyes. Sutingyu rubbed his two little paws excitedly, and then slowly stretched out towards the fat man's neck. Seeing this, the fat man couldn't help but shrink his head. Why did he feel like the boss was going to strangle him to death? Don't move. Sutingyu said in a faint tone when she saw the fat man trembled. Then, Sutingyu quickly grabbed the collar around the fat man's neck with both hands. The fat man with a confused look on his face blinked at Sutingyu, but the latter smiled slightly, and then, use both hands. Goodbye. Clang, a snapping sound suddenly sounded in the deathly silent cage. Just one sound and disappeared. Even if there were slaves or players who heard it, some people looked around subconsciously and found nothing, so they couldn't help but think that they were hallucinating. At this time, in a corner, the fat man's eyes widened in shock, and his open mouth was covered by Chin-Chi's hand in time to silence the fat man's almost scream. Sutingyu held half of the iron ring collar in each hand, and her panel also popped out. Props, broken pet collar, decomposable. Grade, junk. Function, can make disobedient pets obedient, cannot take effect. Whether the copy can be brought out, no. Durability, 28%, reparable. Note, God knows what kind of terrible torture it has suffered, and rebuilding it is the only way out. Fat man, try opening the inventory, Sutinyu said while checking the data of the collar. Qin-Chi put down his hand, and the fat man finally came to his senses. Hearing Sutinyu's words, he quickly followed suit. The fat man tentatively clicked into the inventory and found that it was unobstructed and he could enter the interface normally. He was immediately ecstatic. "Boss, it's okay. The inventory can be opened." Sutinyu was so calm, and combined with the data from the collar, he was finally able to determine the reason why the player could not open the inventory in the first place. Sure enough, it was the collar. Sutinyu handed Qin-Chi half of the collar, took the other half, and clicked on decomposable. Notice. This prop can be decomposed into a certain amount of fine iron. Please tell me if it can be decomposed. Fine iron? Sutinyu was a little surprised. This is one of the mutation materials needed for the first mutation direction of her scythe. Unfortunately, this was not abyssal meteorite, so Sutinyu was not very interested. After reading the data on the collar, Qin-Chi handed it to the fat man to read and said to Sutinyu, "You can't take out the copy yet. There may be some hidden conditions that haven't been met, or there may be no way to take out the copy." Sutinyu looked at the collar in her hand, and then saw a small, smooth hole that looked like a keyhole. "Qin-Chi, fatty, do you think this looks like a keyhole?" The fat man chuckled, "It really looks like a keyhole. This thing should originally need a key to unlock it." However, Sutinyu broke it open with brute force. "I have seen locks picked and smashed, but I have never seen locks broken directly. Fatty thinks that this collar lock is really the most shameless lock in history. Being a bug in a survival game." Author, Kuanke. Chapter 100. Qin-Chi said silently, "Getting the key may be a hidden condition." After saying that, Qin-Chi looked at Sutinyu, indicating with his eyes whether to find the key. According to the normal way of clearing the level, when the player discovers that there is a key that can open the collar, the first step must be to find it by all possible means. But Sutinyu could open the collar directly without looking for a key. That's outrageous. Sutinyu thought about it for a moment. This collar is of no use except that it can be decomposed into refined iron. But I don't need refined iron. What I need is abyssal meteorite iron. Qin-Chi, the game props and materials you don't need can be traded with players in need. Sutinyu was slightly startled. "Yes, why didn't I think of that? I know a player, and his team should be in need of fine iron. If you want to trade, I can help you. Contact him after you clear the dungeon," Qin-Chi continued. "Okay." Sutinyu looked at the two halves of the collar again, no longer showing disgust. They were all game currency. Abyssal meteorite is more precious than refined iron, and it is definitely not realistic to barter it directly, but it can be exchanged for game currency, and then you can collect enough game currency to buy abyssal meteorite in the mall. Ness. She is such an ordinary little genius. Excited, Sutinyu took out the bottle of glue and put glue on the gap in the collar. "Fat man, put it on." Oh. At this time, Qin-Chi and Fatty finally understood the function of glue, but their expressions were a bit incomprehensible. "Break off the collar and glue it back together." God is unaware of it, and as long as no one goes out of his way to investigate, there is a good chance that nothing is wrong. This kind of operation can only be said. 666. The fat man put on the re-glued collar and opened the inventory again. Everything was normal. There are several game props in the inventory that Fatty specially selected and purchased to save his life. When he goes on stage to perform, he will not be afraid of delivering food to the beast. "Boss, it's you. You're awesome." The fat man was full of gratitude to Sutinyu. Sutinyu responded unceremoniously, "Hey, it's just a joke." "Fat man, when you perform on stage, Be careful not to be discovered by other players that you can use game props. Chi watched the two peoples. You praise me for being humble, please continue to praise me game for a while, and interrupted. Yes, that's a problem. Sutinyu frowned. Who knows, the fat man is not worried at all, but is full of confidence. Hey, boss, brother Chin, don't worry, I won't let other players find out that I use props. This time, it was Fatty's turn to be mysterious. Sutinyu couldn't help but ask several times, but the fat man suppressed his anger and deliberately didn't say anything, which made the former feel itchy and unbearable. Thinking that Fatty cherished his own life at all times and would not joke about this kind of thing, Sutinyu stopped interfering. Sutinyu asked Chin Chi if he wanted to break his collar too, but the latter shook his head and refused. The reason is, an intact collar can break down more refined iron than a damaged collar. Listen. This is such thrift. After Sutinyu heard this, he was reluctant to break his own collar. Anyway, even if the two of them don't use props, they are still worthy of those beasts. Although Chin Chi is injured now, his physical fitness is there, and the first batch of players who entered the game can survive to this day. In addition to their own brains and props, the most important point is that their 6 major attributes are more or less rarely improved by games. Moreover, the longer players stay in the game, the more they will understand this truth. In the game props are just auxiliary, and the 6 attributes are the core of the player's survival. 6 major attributes of players, mentioned before: strength, constitution, speed, reaction, spirit, lucky. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 101. Copy the next day. When I woke up, the elevator door, which had been silent all night, opened again at noon. 2 prison guards walked out of the elevator pushing a cart with 2 wooden barrels on it. When they saw the barrels, the slaves started to commotion. Sutinyu took a closer look and found 2 wooden barrels, one filled with water and the other filled with rice. Isn't this what we eat? Why is that all? Other players also noticed the rice and water in the barrel and whispered about it. The 2 prison workers put down the barrels and left with the cart. As soon as the person left, all the slaves immediately rushed forward, trying to be the first to grab enough white rice. Just when everyone was pushing and almost starting to fight, Sutinyu took the lead in front of the barrel and blocked everyone with a quick step. Seeing this, everyone was going to explode. You want to eat all the food? Do you really think we have a good temper? Enough is enough, Angel Su. Sutinyu explained with a smile, how could I eat it all? I just want to get 3 portions of food and water first, and you can do whatever you want with the rest. It's not too much, right? Why did you take it first? Yeah, what if you take too much and we don't have anything to eat? Some players are still unconvinced. Everyone's food is put in a wooden bucket. There is no decent utensil for serving rice. They can only grab it with their hands. If one person grabs it, it will be dirty and disgusting. The slaves will not care whether the food they eat is dirty or not. But the players don't mind. Otherwise, Sutinyu wouldn't have enough time to confront everyone again. Sutinyu expressed his understanding of everyone's resentment, but was determined not to change it. Sutinyu put one hand on the wooden bucket filled with water, still smiling. Don't scare me, I'm timid. I don't care if I get scared. If I get scared, my hands will shake. As he said, the paws on the barrel suddenly began to tremble as if they were ill, and the entire barrel trembled for 2 seconds. The water inside rose and fell, almost pouring out. Don't want. Take it quickly. Everyone panicked all of a sudden, fearing that Sotinyu would shake his hand and shake all the water out. If the rice falls on the floor, you can pick it up and eat it if it doesn't feel dirty, but you can't take back the water that was thrown out. Wow, thank you so much. You guys are so considerate. Sotinyu was so moved that he took the only 2 large wooden spoons next to the barrel without politeness, one filled with water and one filled with rice. After finishing, Sotinyu considerately gave way, allowing others to continue fighting. The rice and water in the wooden spoon were enough to fill the stomachs of Sotinyu and the 3 of them. It's just that the conditions are limited, and they still have to grab the food to eat. The 3 of them can't drink water directly. They have to tilt their heads and pour water into their mouths from a distance, which is a bit troublesome. Sotinyu used the remaining water to wash her hands luxuriously. Apart from delivering a meal during the day, no prison union came to guard the prison, and the prison was not locked. It seemed certain that no slave would dare to escape from the prison. Sotinyu wanted to go out and check the situation, but there were so many people there now that he couldn't find a good opportunity. Until 7 o'clock in the evening, the underground coliseum seemed to suddenly boil. Even Sotinyu and the others in the prison could feel a different aura above their heads. More and more noises were heard, and the footsteps of crowds of people came one after another. The second night's performance is about to begin. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 102. The prison workers came and took away the remaining 50 slaves who had not performed on stage. On the first night of the performance, 3 of the 8 players died, 20 of the 42 NPC slaves died, and those who survived were more or less injured. On this second night, I don't know how many more people will die. After watching Chin-Chi and Fatty being taken away, Sotinyu withdrew his gaze. At this time, the 4 players who survived the first night seemed to have discussed it in advance, sneaking out of the prison like thieves and trying to open the elevator door. As soon as the elevator door opened, the 4 players immediately got in. Sotinyu saw this and hesitated, thinking that he should wait a little longer. This underground coliseum, whether it is the audience, prison workers, or slaves, has a sense of weirdness. It seems that the slaves are not locked up completely like animals, but layers of shackles have been placed on the slaves' minds. Also, could this underground coliseum really be so lax? Let those 4 players test the waters first. It was only the second day of the dungeon, and Sotinyu was not in a hurry, because she needed to find the key to the collar, and she wanted to know more about the underground coliseum. So, Sotinyu turned her attention to the slaves again. Looking left and right, she actually saw a familiar face. Slave 022 looked down at the small rice ball in his arms, swallowed, but did not eat. Today he was lucky enough to grab some rice, which was left over from his lunch and would be eaten later when he was hungry. At this time, there was a commotion around him, and the slaves who were originally near 022 fled frantically as if they had seen a ghost. "Hi, how are you?" Hearing the sound, 022 looked up mechanically and saw a hateful face that gave him nightmares last night. Sotinyu tilted his head, looking harmless. You. 022 was so frightened that he couldn't even speak. He tightly covered the rice ball with both hands, fearing that if he didn't pay attention, it would be snatched away by this abominable devil. Sotinyu used the tone of "we have a friendly exchange" and said with a smile, "Brother, I came to chat with you again to relieve your boredom. Are you happy?" 022 face distorted, "Unhappy? This is not fun at all." The 022 that Sotinyu was looking for turned out to be the miserable male slave whom she had arrested and questioned twice in a row yesterday. 022 stiffened his face and showed a smile that was uglier than crying. "What do you want to do again?" The familiar Sotinyu sat down on the haymat next to 022 and blinked his cute big eyes. "Brother, I'm so bored. I want to hear more stories about the underground coliseum." 022 cursed in his heart, "Is it none of your business that you are bored? Brother, What do you have in your hand? In his ears, a very innocent and doubtful voice came. 022 shuddered, squeezed the rice ball in his hand tightly, and hid it behind his back, with an embarrassed smile on his face. No, it's nothing. You don't want to hear it a story? I'll tell you right now. Just tell me. Oh, Sotinho seemed to know nothing, still smiling brightly, with big eyes twinkling, looking forward to the story. Seeing this, 022 resignedly told Sotinho a story. Midway, the 4 players who ran out were driven back by the vicious prison workers, who also rewarded each of them with 200 lashes. It wasn't until around 24 o'clock that the group of performers who went out to perform came back. There are 18 people missing. Sotinho saw Chinchi and Fatty in the crowd. Fatty looked a little embarrassed, but neither of them had any body parts missing for no reason. Sotinho breathed a sigh of relief.